I have a confession to make. I am by nature an incredibly unproductive person. If you saw me on a typical day without any systems or structures in place, you would see someone who sleeps too late, talks too much, reads random things for hours, listens to music all day, watches movies, buys gadgets that turn me into a zombie, and generally avoids difficult work like the plague. I'm not proud of this, but I'm also not ashamed of it anymore, because I've come to understand a fundamental truth about productivity that changed everything for me. Productivity isn't about your natural tendencies. It's about the systems you build to work with or around those tendencies. If it weren't for the productivity system I've developed over years of trial and error, I wouldn't be writing this. I wouldn't have built a business. I wouldn't have accomplished anything of substance. I'd be exactly what my natural inclinations push me toward: comfortable, distracted, and perpetually unfulfilled. Meanwhile, we're surrounded by social media images of super productive, always on, relentlessly optimized human beings who seem to have it all figured out. But here's what I've learned that's mostly an illusion. And even if it's not, comparing ourselves to that standard is pointless. The real work of productivity isn't about becoming someone else. It's about building a structure that allows you to be your best self despite your worst tendencies. After years of studying my own unproductive habits and working with others who struggle with the same issues, I've identified 10 specific patterns that keep people stuck in cycles of business without results. These aren't the obvious time wasters everyone talks about. These are the subtle, often invisible habits that drain your energy, fragment your focus, and ensure you stay perpetually busy while making minimal progress. Let's dive into these 10 habits, the habits of unproductive people that you don't want to copy. Habit 1, the overworking paradox. When more becomes less, this might seem counterintuitive. How can working too much make you unproductive? But I've lived this cycle repeatedly. I'll work 12 or 13 hours straight, taking breaks only for absolute necessities like eating and maybe a quick workout. I can maintain this intensity for several days, sometimes even a week or two. The feeling of momentum is intoxicating. You feel like a productivity superhero, but then inevitably comes the crash, and it's not a gentle slowdown, it's a full system meltdown. I struggle to get out of bed. I can't focus. I don't want to do anything productive. The creative well is completely dry. What I eventually realized is that I wasn't being sustainably productive. I was borrowing productivity from my future self at a ruinous interest rate. The writer Ernest Hemingway had a better approach. He famously stopped writing each day at the point where he knew exactly what would happen next. He quit while he was ahead, at the height of his creative energy. That's the opposite of what most of us do. We push until we're completely drained, until we have nothing left to give. The solution isn't to work less necessarily, but to work smarter, to understand your natural rhythms, to recognize that creativity, focus, and deep work are finite resources that need to be replenished. If you don't have an urgent deadline, take it easier. Conserve your mental and emotional energy for when you truly need it. The most productive people aren't those who work the most hours. They're those who get the most important work done in the hours they work. Habit 20, the worry waste future trip in your present. My mind used to be a factory of catastrophic thinking. What if I go broke? What if I lose my job? What if this relationship fails? What if I get sick? What if this plane crashes? The what if game was my specialty. I was so self-absorbed in these potential future disasters that I had little attention left for the present moment where actual work and life happen. Here's the reality I had to confront. Most of the things we worry about never happen, and the few that do happen are rarely as catastrophic as we imagine. Worry is like paying interest on a debt you may never owe. It's mental energy spent on hypotheticals instead of actualities. The shift happened when I started asking a different question. Instead of, what if this bad thing happens? I began asking, what can I do right now that would make my life better regardless of what happens? This simple reframe moves you from passive worrying to active problem solving. It brings your attention back to the present moment, the only place where you can actually take productive action. Habit 30, the stubbornness sabotage. When being right becomes more important than being effective, we all deal with people constantly, colleagues, family, friends, clients. And it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking, why should I listen to this person? What do they know? I've been there. The assumption that I'm the smartest person in the room, that my way is the best way. Some stubbornness is valuable. Being deaf to unreasonable critics, staying true to your vision despite naysayers, these are important traits. But stubbornness in collaboration, in relationships, in being open to new ideas, That kind of stubbornness is pure sabotage. The truth is, life is built on relationships. Your career is built on relationships. When you refuse to genuinely listen to others, when you dismiss ideas because they weren't yours, you're not just limiting your growth. You're actively damaging the collaborative ecosystems that enable real achievement. I've had to learn to catch myself in moments of stubborn resistance and consciously choose curiosity instead. What can I learn from this person? What perspective might I be missing? This doesn't mean abandoning your convictions. It means testing them against reality and other viewpoints. Habit 4Z, the checking epidemic, the addiction that fragments your focus. Checking isn't a real action. It's a pseudo activity that gives the illusion of being engaged while actually preventing deep work. I was just checking Facebook. Let me quickly check my email. I need to check the news. I'll just check my stats. I used to be a compulsive checker. When I first started writing online, I would check my website statistics dozens of times a day. Then one day I asked myself, what is the actual outcome of this checking? The answer was sobering nothing. Absolutely nothing. I wasn't taking action based on what I saw. I was just consuming information, feeding an anxiety that could never be satisfied. Checking creates permanent brain fragmentation. It trains your mind to seek novelty constantly, making sustained focus on difficult tasks feel unbearable. The solution isn't to eliminate checking entirely. That's probably unrealistic. Instead, I've learned to contain it. I deleted all social media and news apps from my phone. I don't have email on my phone. I schedule specific times for checking things that matter, and I've become ruthless about eliminating checking that serves no purpose. Habit 5, the escapism trap. Running from problems that follow you for years, my response to stress was escape. I need a drink. I have to go on vacation. I just need to get away. When work or relationship issues became overwhelming, my instinct was to pretend they didn't exist or to physically distance myself from them. What I eventually realized was that my desire to escape was a symptom of a deeper problem. I didn't like fundamental aspects of my life. I didn't like my job. My relationship was struggling. I felt disconnected in the city where I lived. But instead of addressing these root causes, I kept seeking temporary relief. The hard truth is that problems don't disappear when you look away. They just grow in the dark. Escapism gives you just enough stamina to continue tolerating an unsatisfactory life. The shift to productivity came when I stopped trying to escape and started confronting issues while they were still small. I began asking, what is the real problem here? What would it take to actually solve this rather than temporarily avoiding it? A habit 6E, the saying yes, disease. When generosity becomes self-betrayal, many of us are afraid to say no. We don't want to disappoint people. We want to be helpful. We're uncomfortable with the potential conflict or judgment that might come from setting boundaries. But here's the uncomfortable truth. If you keep saying yes to everything, you're living someone else's life. Every yes to something unimportant is a no to something important. Every time you agree to take on a project that doesn't align with your goals, attend a meeting that doesn't require your presence, or fulfill a request that drains your energy, you're surrendering control of your most finite resource, your time and attention. Want to be in full control of your life. Learn to say no to a million things so you can say yes to the few things that truly matter. This isn't about being selfish. It's about being strategic. It's about recognizing that your capacity is limited and that diffusing your energy across too many commitments means you won't excel at any of them. Habit 7, the memory myth, why your brain is a terrible filing cabinet. I'll remember that. I don't need to write it down. My memory is great. These are the famous last words of perpetually overwhelmed people. Your brain is an incredible processing machine, but it's a terrible storage device. When you try to keep tasks, ideas, and commitments in your head, you're wasting precious cognitive resources on remembering instead of creating. Writing everything down isn't just about organization, it's about cognitive liberation. When you externalize your mental load, you free up RAM for actual thinking, problem solving, and creativity. This is why practices like journaling, maintaining a task list, and capturing ideas immediately are so powerful. They don't just help you remember, they help you think better. Habit 80, the self-criticism cycle, how being hard on yourself backfires. I suck at this. Why can't I get this right? I'm so disorganized. Many of us believe that being hard on ourselves will motivate improvement. But the opposite is true. Constant self-criticism doesn't fuel productivity. It drains the very energy and confidence needed to be productive. When you criticize yourself relentlessly, you activate your brain's threat response, putting you in a defensive, stressed state that's incompatible with creative, focused work. The alternative isn't empty praise or lowered standards. It's compassionate objectivity. I didn't handle that situation well. What can I learn from it? How can I do better next time? This approach maintains high standards while avoiding the energy drain of self-flagellation. Habit 9 in the education Lee, when learning stops, life stops. Many of us subconsciously believe that education ends when formal schooling does. We celebrate finishing college or university as if it's the conclusion of learning rather than the foundation. But in a world that's changing exponentially, this mindset is a recipe for irrelevance. The most productive people I know are relentless learners. They read constantly. They take courses. They seek out new skills and perspectives. They understand that personal growth and professional relevance depend on continuous education. Your life doesn't stop when learning stops, but your growth certainly does. And without growth, productivity becomes mere maintenance, keeping things as they are rather than making them better. Habit Hente, the rule rebellion, why fighting constraints limits your freedom. This was my biggest breakthrough. For most of my life, I hated rules. I saw them as limitations on my freedom and creativity. I wanted to be a maverick, to do things my way. But what I eventually discovered was that my rebellion against rules was actually making me less free, not more. Josh Weltman, an advertising creative director with 25 years of experience and co-producer of Mad Men, captured this perfectly when he wrote, "Solving a problem requires a weird combination of freedom and constraint. Whenever I hear just have fun with it or think outside the box, I know from experience that things are about to turn into a colossal waste of time. Constraints don't limit creativity, they channel it. Rules don't restrict freedom, they create the conditions for it. When you have clear boundaries and structures, you don't waste energy deciding what to do or how to do it. You can pour all your energy into excelling within those parameters." This understanding transformed my approach to productivity. I began creating personal rules, read and exercise every day. Never complain. Close each day by setting the next day's priorities. Write first, check email later. These rules weren't restrictions, they were liberations. They automated decision-making in areas that didn't require creative thought, preserving my mental energy for what truly mattered. When you combine all these personal productivity rules, you have a system. And that system is what allows naturally unproductive people like me to consistently produce meaningful work. The system does the heavy lifting of discipline, so I don't have to rely on willpower, which I know is unreliable. I still have all my unproductive tendencies. I still want to sleep in, browse mindlessly, escape difficult tasks, and avoid structure. But my system protects me from myself. It creates guardrails that keep me moving forward even when my natural inclinations would be standing still. That's the real secret to productivity. It's not about fighting your nature. It's about building a structure that works with your nature. It's about recognizing your unproductive habits, not to eliminate them entirely, which is probably impossible, but to build systems that prevent them from derailing your progress. So take an honest look at these 10 habits. How many do you recognize in yourself? Don't judge yourself for them. Just see them clearly. Then ask, what's one rule I could create? What's one system I could build? What's one structure I could put in place that would make it easier to be productive despite these tendencies? That's how you transform from someone who's perpetually busy into someone who's genuinely productive, not by becoming a different person, but by building a better system. And if a naturally unproductive person like me can do it, I promise so can you.